Physical structure refers to the actual layout or surrounding of a person's environment. In planning for individual students, you'll need to consider all possible settings in which the student may need support. These can include the home, school, community, or work environments. To provide physical structure in the classroom, you need to think about the way each area is set up to support learning and attention. The physical boundaries are clearly defined and usually include areas for activities like work, play, snack, music, and transitioning. These areas can be defined differently in middle school and high school and include other age-appropriate activities such as daily living skills, recreation, leisure, or vocational training. Furniture and materials are used to provide boundaries and help to define what activities will take place in each area. Physical structure also provides increased organization for students and helps everyone to understand what activities are occurring in each area of the classroom at any given time. A well-designed classroom environment also helps to minimize distractions and support positive behavior outcomes for students. Let's take a look at the physical layout and boundaries of this airport. The airport has physical boundaries that identify spaces. Upon entering the space, guests can identify where they may need to go based on physically designed walkways. Environmental arrangement and signs within the space are used to identify the activities that are taking place in each area. For example, security, check-in, baggage claim, etc. In the classroom, just like the airport, the more the space is defined by the physical structure and visual cues, the less dependent we are on others to gain information. The physical structure provides the information we need to function more independently within an environment.
You can set up the physical space in your classroom to support independence, minimize distractions, and increase attention to the task or activity in each area. The University of North Carolina Teach Autism Program's structured teaching approach describes 3 key steps to use as you set up your classroom learning environment. The first step is to set up key areas of the classroom based on the curriculum. You will then use the furniture and materials to help define the boundaries for each of these areas. The final step in designing the physical structure is to add contextual cues to provide a general idea of what is expected in each space. The steps will be broken down in detail in the following slides.
To develop and design key areas, you will need to look at critical activities that will need to take place within your classroom. These areas and activities are dictated by the needs of the students who will be served in the space and their scheduled curriculum requirements. Although the students and schedules may fluctuate and change from year to year or over time, the need for some key areas will remain the same. The areas may include space for small and whole group instruction, one-to-one instruction, independent work areas, play, leisure, sensory areas, computer technology centers, transition areas, or snacks or meal times, as well as others. Of course, the areas in your classroom will also be determined by the grade level you teach, so you will want to make sure that your classroom design is age appropriate. Take a moment and visualize your classroom while considering student needs. What physical areas would you like to create? You will want to consider the student schedules, activities, and curriculum to help determine which areas will be the most meaningful for setup and design. You may also want to consider what materials you have available to create the space. Once you've determined the key areas you want to create in the classroom, you'll need to consider the materials you have available or will need to design the space. To segment the classroom into meaningful parts for each activity, begin by using the natural boundaries of the space and then arrange the furniture to block off specific areas. Tables, bookshelves, cubicles, and partitions can be used to divide or segment the space. Floor coverings such as carpet tiles, rugs, or even tape on the floor may be added to help further define each area. Finally, given the limited space in many classrooms, some areas may need to be used for more than one purpose. For example, a kidney table could be used for small group reading in the morning and used for snack activities in the classroom when a tablecloth is placed on the table as a visual cue. By defining the different areas with shelves and partitions, students are better able to recognize where activities take place and where they are supposed to be at any given time. Use furniture, floor covering, color coding, pictures, and signs to help create these boundaries and identify which locations serve which function. Remember, when designing your classroom, it is important to ensure that all areas of your room are visible and can be supervised by adults at all times. This is an example of a highly structured elementary classroom. Notice how all spaces are clearly defined with small group areas and well-defined center areas. In addition, individual workspaces were developed for 3 students needing varying levels of structure. One work area is located next to the computer to allow quick access to the student's primary reinforcer once he has completed his work. This student is high functioning and is capable of working both one-on-one and independently, but requires frequent reinforcement and has difficulty transitioning from long distances. The workstation located in the middle of the room between the 2 bookshelves was designed for a student who simply needs an alternate place to work, one-on-one with a teacher or independently. He is not highly distracted, nor does he have difficulty staying within his boundaries. The workstation in the lower right-hand corner was designed for a lower functioning student who requires significant structure in a one-to-one instructional setting for most of the day. You will notice there are minimal distractions and bookshelves are used to clearly define the boundaries of his workstation. This is an actual photo of the workstation located in the lower right-hand corner of the elementary example on the previous slide. The blue chair is designated as the teacher's chair. The red chair is where the student will sit as they work, and the yellow chair is simply a visual reminder that the student needs to stay seated while working. The desk is moved aside for the student to go into his work area, but again provides an additional visual reminder that he needs to stay seated while he's working. Based on the level of physical structure in this photo, what do you know about this student? This student needs a high level of structure. He tends to be highly distractible and can be a runner or elope in attempts to escape from work. This is another photo of a student's independent workstation that's shown in the elementary example on the previous slide. The student is a higher functioning student who travels a great deal throughout the day. He needed to be reminded to stay in his work area, so the picket fence is there only as a visual reminder. It does not have hinges nor a latch. The student simply sets it aside when he's finished working. One thing to note is that the student's primary reinforcer is computer time, so the teacher had to rearrange the environment so that the computer was easily accessible to the student. You'll note on the elementary layout, the computer is located to the left of his workstation. This is a high school example of a highly structured classroom. If you notice, various areas are well defined with access to a variety of age-appropriate instructional areas. The furniture is used to create multiple spaces for students to do both academic as well as functional and vocational activities throughout the day. Often, when planning physical structure for students, we fail to consider that a student may need a highly physically structured environment not only in the resource setting, but also in the general education setting. This is one example of how a general education teacher and special education teacher work together to develop an individualized workspace for students that could also be utilized by typical peers as appropriate. The following were considerations for this classroom layout. The gray student desk is the work area for the targeted student during whole class instruction. It is located near the door in case the student needs to take a break. Notice that 4 additional workstations were lined up on the wall for use by the targeted student or students as well as other students who might need additional structure throughout the day. There's also a one-to-one instructional table for the teacher to work with the student one-on-one, and a peer workstation which could be utilized throughout the day for peer support. Once the space is designed and physical boundaries are created, students must be taught to stay within the boundaries during designated activities. Teaching strategies include modeling, reinforcement, and corrective feedback. These steps can be used to teach the boundaries within a given space. First, introduce the learner to the boundary. Then model how to stay within the boundary, providing reinforcement when he or she stays within that area. As you model, Be sure to provide corrective feedback when the learner does not stay within the boundary you are teaching. Most importantly, be consistent with your instruction of various boundaries until the student is able to stay within the area with increased independence. Let's look at some examples of physical structure in the classroom that help define the spaces within. Notice the use of dividers to clearly segment the space. The areas are well organized and designed to reduce distractions. This is a typical left-to-right workstation for students that can be used for one-on-one instruction and independent work. In this example, you can see how the teacher used individual desks pushed together to create a whole group instructional area. An area for computers and technology is also visible against the wall and facing away from the group area to reduce distraction. Partitions are used in the corner to create a sensory area that students may access upon request. The divider is easily opened at the corner to allow for entry. Keep in mind that this space would remain open during use in order to maintain visual supervision. In this example, the kitchen snack area is clearly defined by the natural boundaries of a snack bar. A half door was installed to support safety measures, only allowing entry to the cooking environment during scheduled activities. This is an example of how tape can be used on the floor to outline boundaries for students who have difficulty staying within designated areas. This small group instructional area doubles as a snack table in the afternoon. The materials on the table define which activity will occur throughout the daily schedule. Once the spaces have been developed, the last step is to add contextual cues to provide information about what will take place in each area. You may help provide cues by using materials to define the space. For example, an appliance and furniture may help define what takes place in the kitchen area. Toys define what happens in a play activity or structured play area. The circle time rug, bulletin board, or smart board help define circle time area. It is also a good idea to post signs to clearly identify each area. This supports both students and adults in understanding what takes place in each area. Labeling, highlighting, and color coding can be used as a contextual cue to provide information about various activities occurring in designated areas. This is an example of how a teacher defines specific work area boundaries for her students on the table during small group instruction. Notice the students' names are written with dry erase marker on the table as an additional visual cue. When designing the physical setup of the classroom and developing specific areas for instruction, take into consideration the following: the age and grade level of the students, their ability to engage and attend to certain activities throughout the course of the day, as well as their understanding and use of the boundaries. Can the students specifically understand what they're supposed to be doing in certain areas of the room? In addition, you need to consider what curricular areas need to be addressed, which should be defined by your classroom schedule. Lastly, staff to student ratio for supervision and instruction should also be a major consideration as you're developing your physical structure. Using the environmental arrangement planning form, make a list of areas that you would like to create in your classroom. It is often helpful to sketch out a blueprint of your classroom on graph paper to save time and troubleshoot difficult areas. This may also prevent you from having to move furniture multiple times.